Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Visibility Factor podcast. This is Sue Barber, your host. I'm so excited today to bring you my guest, Brittany Canaski, who is a leadership coach and trainer, but she has a lot of good things to talk about today around goals. We're still at the beginning of the year, still can be something that we focus on. And so she's got some great ideas that I think will be helpful for you. So welcome to the show, Brittany.
Thank you, Sue. I'm excited to be here today.
I'd love to have you introduce yourself and share a little bit more about your background.
Sure, definitely. So, like you said, I'm a leadership coach and trainer at my own business, Hello Velocity. I've been doing this full time now for just over 5 years, and actually, just had a little party to celebrate my 5-year quit anniversary. I call it from corporate America, and that was last October, which was a lot of fun. And so before that, I was in corporate America. I was working in branding and marketing in the grocery industry, and I was climbing the corporate ladder, and I thought that was going to be my whole career. Honestly, I thought that was actually what I went to school for. So I thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And then I had my quarter life crisis at the ripe age of 27, where I realized this was just not as fulfilling as I would have loved it to be. And I worked with a coach for the first time, and it was actually the first coach I'd really ever heard of. And I just really connected with her. And she helped me navigate that feeling and helped me kind of explore new ideas for myself. And I did make a transition in corporate, but at the same time too, I just absolutely fell in love with the process of coaching and realized if I could help someone the way that she'd helped me, that would be more fulfilling than anything I could do in corporate for the next 30, 40 years. So I then took a year-long coach training program on the side of my new day job, and I kind of snowballed from there. It was just, I started coaching, and then the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it. So by October 2020, I left my day job and pursued it full time. And now I'm specializing working with women in corporate America and in leadership positions and helping them leveling up, but helping them prevent burnout at the same time, because a lot of us women, we're high achievers, but we also like to take on a lot ourselves. And we oftentimes need to learn different things like delegation, prioritization, strategic planning, and goal setting.
Mhm. Well, we have a similar path where, I met my coach and I thought, wow, that's a job. That's amazing. I
Yeah.
definitely want to do that. But it took me a few more years after that before I ended up leaving. But was there anything within corporate that was like a pivotal moment for you where you were disillusioned that I just can't stay here anymore? Was it burnout?
Yeah, I think it was burnout. I didn't know that's what it was at the time, and I don't think that phrase was really used back then, but it was 2018, I think, when all this kind of started, and I was actually working remotely before that was a thing, and I was getting paid well, and like I said, I was moving up the corporate ladder. I was doing everything I said that I wanted to do, and it kind of I almost felt like I peaked at 27, right? This is what I went to school for. I keep moving up and I keep getting paid more, and I'm doing the work I wanted to be doing. And then I realized, okay, I don't want my boss's job. I don't want my boss's job anymore. So what am I doing this for? And just kind of realizing I was not being challenged in the way I wanted to be challenged intellectually. And it just wasn't fulfilling. So I'm like, uh-oh, now what? I've spent my whole life up to this point working for this very moment. And then I got there and was like, this isn't very satisfying. And this isn't what it doesn't feel like what it was all cracked up to be, of just like kind of leading your whole early career and education up to that point and then getting there and like, I can't do this for another 30 years.
Well, at least you didn't wait 30 years to figure that out. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's good for you.
Yeah. I'm glad it was a quarter life and not a midlife crisis,
All right.
honestly.
Exactly. Yeah. So, how did you come up with the name for your company, Hello Velocity?
Yeah, I actually did work with someone and hired someone who does branding. So
Mm,
she helped me with the logo, with the name. And she had come up with a bunch of different names. And actually, Hello Velocity, I think, was actually a tagline for a different name that she was recommending. But as soon as I heard it, I was just like, that's it. That's it. It evoked like this feeling in me. And this is even how we like built my brand strategy, is that the hello is kind of the approachability. That's like my number one value in my business, is I want people to feel welcomed. I want to come across as very approachable. And then the velocity is the speed of it. Helping people achieve their goals even quicker than they would on their own is another part of the business. So I want it to be something very like welcoming, but also supportive to move forward on your goals, and it just somehow is encapsulated in those 2 words very quickly, and it was just like that immediate, like, gut feeling of, "Yep, that's it."
So,
Yeah.
so I'm curious about your transition from corporate into being an entrepreneur. How was that transition for you?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't easy, and it's one of those I always say to people, it's not for everyone. You really need to know what you're getting into before you do it, I think, and I don't think I did know what I was getting into, and like I said, this wasn't like a long-term goal for me. It was something that was just like within a year and a half, I think, of working with a coach, I had quit my job to do it full time, so it was a very quick turnaround for me. So, it wasn't easy, and honestly, I'm still 5 years out, I'm still working through unlearning a lot of corporate behaviors, and I think there's still a lot of that hustle and grind that has been ingrained in me for a decade that I'm still trying to let go of. And I'm actually working with a coach right now to help me through that because I realized, wait, I didn't build a business just to have another job where I feel like I have to sit at my computer from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And that, kind of defeats the point of going into a business for yourself. So yeah, it hasn't been easy, but it's also it feels like one of those roller coasters where the highs are a lot higher, but the lows are a lot lower. So it really feels like those highs that happen more often than they did in corporate are really worthwhile for me. And again, it's so fulfilling and I'm really helping people. And I never had that feeling when I was in corporate America on a day-to-day basis. And now I do have it every single day. So even the hard parts and even the lows and having to learn how to sell, let alone sell myself and my business, and it's very difficult, but it's totally worth it for me.
Yeah. I feel the same. I'm 10 years in and I feel like I'm still learning things all the time. So I think that's what's kind of cool about it. But it's also different when you're doing it for yourself. It's just a different experience. But I didn't prepare myself well either at the beginning. Okay, so I want to talk about goals because I know that you have been working with people on that. Well, I'm just curious what some of the challenges are that you're hearing from the people that you're working with on their goals.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges I see for people is similar to what you said. Either they're setting a goal that they're not actually invested in, like it's something they think they should be doing,
Mhm.
or it's once they've set the goal, if it's something they are excited about, then we have all of these automatic habits and patterns of how we go about chasing these goals or going after them. And a lot of times we're either not aware of these habits or we're so aware of them and we think that's just who we are. That's how I work. That's my personality. I don't know any other way and I'm not going to try anything else. So that's usually where I come in with people is helping them really pinpoint what are those habits and patterns that probably have gotten you this far, but they're not going to get you to that next level. And it's helping you see those blind spots of, yeah, this might help you get 80% of the way, but that last 20%, and that's the point that really, like, really gets to us and annoys us about ourself usually of, "Wow, why can't I get over this hump?" Or, "Why do I keep abandoning these goals so quickly?" Or, "Why do I keep burning out because I keep running after them so quickly?" Usually that's what I'm working on with people is like, what's that 20% that actually causes probably 80% of your pain points on a day-to-day
Mhm.
basis? Help them identify it and then help them find more supportive ways of going about their goals and just their day-to-day work, honestly, like how to think about it differently and how to approach it in a more empowering and supportive way instead of a draining and again, that like hustle and grind that a lot of us are actually addicted to.
So when people are coming to you, do you think that they are struggling with the shoulds? These are the things I should do to get to the next level, to be able to be ready for that. Or
Yeah, usually it is that should what I should be doing, and it is usually, like, what it sounds good externally is usually how I say it, is like, "Oh, this" either someone I know or maybe in the movies or shows or media, it really makes it sound like this is the next thing, like, again, climbing the corporate ladder, I always have to be getting to this next level, and then there's some arbitrary clock and timeline that's clicking, and yeah, usually there's something like that that's motivating us that is getting in our way, honestly, and it's because it's if you set this goal that's externally based, not internally based, you're not gonna be motivated around it, and you're not gonna have the commitment and dedication that you need to move forward on it. So, a lot of times I'm helping people identify the real why behind their goals. especially something like that when it comes to getting to the next level, or sometimes it's hitting a certain pay that you want, or even personal goals. It's, oh, I want to lose 10 pounds, or oh, I want to go to the gym 5 days a week, or I want to move to a new city. Let's dive a bit deeper. What is really the why behind that? And maybe it is the same goal, but we need to get really clear about what that why is. Or maybe it's a different angle to look at that goal of, okay, maybe it's not the, $100,000 salary. Maybe what you actually need to do is figure out what dollar amount would be really exciting for you and would hit all of those goals. Like, what do you want to do with that $100,000 once you have it, and like actually map that out? Or you could build it backwards of, hey, what do I want to be doing that requires money, and how much do I actually need? And you might build it out backwards and find it's actually like 80,000 you'd be really happy with, or maybe it's 150,000, and it doesn't matter what it is, but it's the why behind it and what you want to do with it that will then allow you to be more excited about your goal and actually be consistent with it. And
Mhm.
then another thing I see that comes up a lot with people is the all or nothing mentality of, when they're setting a goal, they're going from 0 to 100 in this goal. So again, like personal goals, my favorite one is the going to the gym example in January. Most people do this a lot, where they go from not working out at all to then, oh, I'm going to go 5 days a week for an hour at 5 a.m. every single day. It's like, that is literally going from 0 to 100. And you're really just setting yourself up for failure right away. So a lot of times people can stick with that goal for a week or two maybe, but then they fall off because it's not realistic to change your habits that quickly. So a lot of this does come back to habits too, and how to make them more realistic for you and make them more supportive for you. And again, what works for you as an individual, not just what you heard someone else talking about on a podcast, right? Or what you heard your best friend does, or someone over here, just these made up things and movies that we're consuming. And it's like, hey, let's actually learn more about you, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what's supportive for you, and then maybe take some like baby steps to work up to that, whatever that workout goal as an example is, and move up more gradually. Instead of 0 to 100, let's start with 10% and then 20%, then 50%, and things like that are actually way more helpful for people.
Well, what I like about that is almost like giving them a permission slip that they get to choose for themselves a little bit.
Mhm.
Because I do think there's a lot of external validation that people are comparing themselves to other people, or, the shoulds come up a lot. But I think it's just having clarity for yourself about what it is you want, what's really going to make you happy and fulfilled. I always just find it interesting because I think you're right. A lot of people focus on the external view versus their internal view, and maybe it's just because they've never seen someone else do it.
Mm,
Like, I've not
yeah.
seen someone else be able to do this successfully, so I don't even think it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, or they don't know what it will look like on a day-to-day basis. They're not thinking
Mhm.
about that. It could be getting to that next job means you're traveling 80%, and you didn't actually think about, okay, on a day-to-day basis, what does that mean? If you're gone
Right.
3 weeks out of 4 in a month, what will that do for your personal life or your family
Mhm.
life, and think about that, and think about it on a day-to-day basis. And even, the gym example of, hey, going to the gym at 5 a.m. every day, is that actually realistic? Because then that means you need to be going to bed at, what, 8:30, 9 o'clock, and can you
Right.
commit to that? Do you wanna commit to that? And, yeah, you really need to, like, get into the specifics of the day-to-day, but then also, again, the why of, like, is this important to you? Why is it important to you? And then if it is, then you will be more willing to go to bed at 8:30 p.m. or travel 80%. You need to understand for yourself, and not just, the shiny object syndrome of, oh, this sounds really great to make a lot of money, and it sounds really great to go to the gym every day, but will you be happy going after that goal too?
Mhm. Yeah. Happiness is important too, everyone. So
Mhm.
don't let that go by the wayside. Yeah, and I think sometimes it's when you were talking about what do you think this really looks like day to day, there's a lot of assumptions of what someone else might be doing and what you think that means. I was just on with someone before we got on, and everything that she talked about was, well, it's like this. And I said, are you sure? Do you know that for sure?
Ooh.
She's like, well, no, I don't know that for sure. And I said, okay, well, you probably should have some conversations before making assumptions that may or may not be true, because you're only
Oh.
seeing one piece of the puzzle here. You may not be seeing the whole thing. And it's good to have that full picture before you make a decision.
Yeah, don't base it off, someone else's social media where they're just posting all the glamorous sides of something.
So, do you have any examples of what someone came in with as a situation and then what you did to work with them to create goals that they can really stick with, and then what happened after?
Honestly, I feel like I'm talking about goals every day with clients, and that was why I actually started this new goal strategy session offering. It's just a one-off 45-minute session for people that have a specific goal that they're kind of struggling with. And I actually did it recently with a bunch of people all in one day. A company hired me to do actually just 20-minute, really quick sessions with individuals at their company for like a half day, which was really fun to just like honestly meet someone for the first time as we're talking about a very specific goal and doing it like really fast paced. It was wild and really fun. But yeah, some interesting examples I was thinking from that session. And again, just in 20 minutes, there was someone who wanted to leave their job and she was trying to come up with the clarity of when to do it. So she'd already made the decision it was going to happen, and it was just a matter of the timeline because there were so many different dates involved with getting a bonus from her job, but then also different like personal and work trips. And again, just in 20 minutes, we were able to get to a conclusion for her to come up with the exact date of when she wanted to give her notice, when she wanted to leave. And what it really came down to in the situation, and a lot of them, is just allowing the person to kind of word vomit, is what I call it, of just like get it all out. What are all these factors involved in the decision, especially if it's something like that where you're trying to make a hard decision, is just letting them say it all out loud, get it out of your head, because a lot of times we're just like swirling in our brains of all these thoughts and fears and anxieties. And then I was just taking notes. I just type notes when I'm meeting with clients, and then I can kind of organize them as we're talking through it and read it back to them of saying, okay, here's essentially a pro con list from what you said of like, here's the pros of doing this, cons of doing that, and then pro con of maybe a different date. And then it was just helping her see which were facts and which were fears, is really what it came down
Mm.
to. So one of the options, it was all the cons were just fears of doing it. And then the other option of staying longer were actual like facts that she knows again about her day-to-day basis and why she wasn't happy there. So it became a really clear decision then of, hey, you're just scared to leave. That's okay. That's normal. We're all scared to make big decisions. But these were literally just sharing her thoughts back to her and saying, well, here's two pro con lists of the two different options. And it can become really simple at that rate.
I like the facts or fears. That's really good because they don't realize. And I think that's what I do too. Is I write a bunch of things down and then I'll say, "Here's what I just heard."
Yeah.
And when you're in like word vomit or just autopilot and just spilling your guts, so to speak,
Mhm.
you don't realize even sometimes what you're saying. And
Mhm.
it can be helpful. And because we're trained to look for words and what they're saying and pay attention to that, it's really an interesting process, so I love that you could do that. I think it's really interesting that they did those sessions in 20 minutes. That's really fast to not even have met them and to
Mhm.
be able to take that and turn it around into something that they can execute against, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, yeah, it was really fun, and it was a total experiment for me and the company that hired me, and they were doing, like, a wellness day at essentially a commercial building where this was a property management company that hired me, and they were doing, yeah, this wellness event, so they also had, some masseuses there who were doing, like, 10-minute massages that people could sign up for, and they're like, "What if you did, like, quick coaching sessions too?" I was like, "Sure, let's try it. I've never done
Yeah.
anything that quickly," and it was really cool to see that, yeah, every client I worked with that day could come to some clear decision by the end of 20 minutes. And oftentimes it's literally just saying what's been swirling in your head. I swear that's 80% of coaching is just
Mhm.
getting it out and saying it to someone who's trained to be a neutral third party. And then, like you said, repeat back what we heard in a meaningful way to say, okay, here, let's organize all these thoughts. Like now that they're not just swirling in your head and causing anxiety, like how do we make it, a productive conversation, and how do we move
Yeah.
forward based on this? And then what do you want to commit to, or what needs to change from there? And it can be really empowering again, just in 20 minutes. It was a very cool experiment.
Yeah. I always say, give me 15 minutes and I can tell you a lot of things. Mhm. Based on what you've told me, right? Just turning it and they're always so worried, I think, because they're like, "This doesn't seem to make sense. I'm just talking all over the place." Like, it's okay. I'm listening for the things that I'm gonna help you, like, look at in a mirror, so to speak,
Mhm.
and realize that you actually know more about this than you think or that you have more of the answers than you realize. They're just
Yeah.
jumbled up in your head right now, and we need to kind of give you clarity to help you look at them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
The number of
that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, the number of times I've been or I've heard from a client or a potential client, like, "Sorry, I'm just rambling now," or, "Sorry, I just keep talking." I'm like, "No, this is the point. Like, let it out. Keep going. Just say what you gotta say, and this
Yep.
is part of the process." And but I think that's part of it is people don't get that opportunity to do that. Sometimes we're just venting to our partners or friends, but we can't always say the scary things. Sometimes we're either holding back a bit or we are venting, and obviously our friends and family members usually aren't trained as a coach, of course, but then
Right.
they're also just there to be supportive of you and they're protective of you and they're going to say, "Oh, it's okay, honey, you'll get it next time," or, "I don't know how to help you, but it'll be okay, I swear," or, "I'm sorry you're going through that. Your boss is a real jerk." And like sometimes we need that. We need that just, loving, supportive encouragement. But from a coach, we can again make it I would say it's a productive conversation. It's a yes,
Mhm.
that can be true. And what are you going to do about it? Like, let's not stay in this.
What do you think helped you become really good at goals?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it lately as I've kind of had this revelation of doing this as an experiment, these 20-minute and 45-minute sessions. And I realized actually in corporate America, I was doing a lot of like strategic goal planning and whether it was like branding or marketing or even just at a business level, it was a lot of strategic thinking and strategic planning. And those were always my favorite sessions or client meetings is when like, "Hey, let's get a big whiteboard. Let's spend like 4 hours in a room and like really map out something." And like those were my kind of favorite sessions. So I realized like I did have a long, I guess, a long time that I've already been thinking about that before I even got into any sort of coaching. So I think I brought that in. And then also I used to be an analyst, so I'm also, I think, really good at, like, diving into those details and organizing facts and, like we said, the facts versus fears. I feel like I can, like, get into the weeds of these ideas and goals pretty easily and help people map them out. So it's kind of interesting. I think I'm a very left and right brain person, so I can kinda bring the high level into then the details and connect them pretty quickly. It's just, I think, how my brain works. Yeah, it just kind of comes naturally to me, but I hadn't really thought about it before until recently, like, "Oh, this makes a lot of sense. So this is, kind of what I used to do in corporate, but now from a very different perspective and again,
Mhm.
very much more fulfilling and helpful for individuals." It just kinda happened naturally and I didn't have to think about it, and I think that's when you know you're really good at what you do and, like, you're
Right.
you're doing what you're meant to be doing. That's how I feel. It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I just ended up doing it and I'm really good at it." I'm like, "Huh, that was cool how that worked out."
Sometimes I think the clients tell us when I started out, visibility wasn't top of mind of what I was going to coach people on. But
Mm.
over time, everybody who came to me had visibility challenges. And I was like, oh my gosh, like they're me, 10 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever. And that was the aha moment for me. So, is there a framework or something that you walk people through when you do these sessions?
Yeah, I actually did build my own kind of framework that I call the performance personas framework, and it's
Mm,
helping people kind of quickly personify which of these patterns that they are falling into. And it's essentially, it all comes back to this idea that we need clarity, structure, and confidence in order to move consistently towards these goals. And I have this visual aid. It's a Venn diagram of those three words. And it's also, I like to think of it as like an equation of clarity plus structure plus confidence equals your peak performance or, momentum essentially. And most people are missing at least one of those three, if not two of them.
mm,
And it helps them see, okay, if your strength is structure, you're probably big into planning, you love your to-do list, you love your calendar, you're really organized, but it might mean that you lack the confidence to say no, to pivot from those plans, to delegate to other people. So it's this kind of visual framework, but also personifies where you're at in this framework to then see, okay, if you're a planner, you might be missing that confidence. And then we can kind of talk through it more specifically to say, okay, what do you need to feel more confident in this goal or in this situation, whatever it is. And I think it helps that it's just a very simple visual. It's literally like 3 bubbles that I have for people and helps them see really quickly where they're at. And then you can refer back to it in the future in different situations. So I often have had it up on my wall too, because even though I made this several years ago, I'm like, I still get stuck in it too. Like we all have these strengths that tend to overpower the other areas. And yeah, you can get sucked into it in all different projects and all different areas of life and all different stages of projects too. And it can change depending on which kind of project you're working on. So it's one of those that can be like a quick visual gut check for you to say, okay, I feel kind of stuck on this goal. And you can look at the visual aid and then say, oh, well, I'm missing confidence. Okay, what would make me more confident? Or I'm missing clarity. I don't even know where I'm trying to go or what it's going to look like. Or, oh, I have no structure. I have absolutely no plan in place of how I'm going to get there. So let me take some time to think about a plan. And it can work for the littlest goal of, I had a client one time who was wanting to get back into gardening. And she's like, man, I just really keep putting it off and I don't understand why. And we did that exercise and she realized that she didn't have the clarity of like what she wanted to plant. I think she's like, I have all the tools, I have all the, seeds or whatever it was, and I'm confident in it because I've done it before, but I just haven't decided what I'm going to plant. It's like, all right, then take some time to figure it out and then you'll do it because you have everything else you need. And she did it right away. It's so simple sometimes to, again, just have this conversation and talk through it out loud with someone else and say, oh, that's all I'm missing. That's it.
Yeah.
And then it's just a
Yeah.
light bulb moment. All right, let's go.
Let's go.
Mhm.
I was just thinking about when I go to Home Depot, usually Mother's Day we go and pick out. There's so many flowers, so many plants, so many vegetables, so many things to choose from. I was thinking, is there an overwhelm factor? At
Oh,
least for me, that's usually what I have. She might have just wanted to make the
mhm.
perfect choices.
Yeah, yeah, that definitely comes up in the framework too, is overwhelm, analysis paralysis,
Hmm.
perfectionism is like seeing how those can play out and what that looks like in the equation too. It's really interesting. And it's one of those, it was just such a repeated pattern I saw in my clients. And I could think of really specific clients who would fit into any one of these 6 personas, and it's just so interesting. Even if they're working on so many different goals, they still were kind of behaving very similarly and repeatedly like the same thing over and over again. So
Yeah.
that's how that came about to be, is just looking at my client notes from the first few years of working as a coach and then realizing, oh, there's like these 6 patterns I keep seeing over and over again.
That's pretty cool. It sounds like maybe a future book or article there, Brittany.
Definitely, yeah, it'll definitely be a book at some point. It's just, it's a when. I haven't committed to the when yet.
Yeah. Well, it takes a lot to do it. I'm not gonna lie, but it's definitely worth it whenever you're ready
Well,
to make that happen. So I always think it's hard for people with goals to stay motivated. And we talked a little bit about like going to the gym and or, setting up your New Year's resolution to go to the gym in January. And I think most people stop by like February 10th or something. There's a
uh-huh,
date even that they've identified. So
yeah.
what do you think causes that motivation to just kind of wane a little bit from where they started?
Yeah, I think most people lose motivation as soon as they fall off track from their plan. So unfortunately, like you said, it's pretty quick for most of us. I think it is like February 10th or 12th is like Quitter's Day, they've called it, of the most
That's
people
right.
have quit their New Year's resolutions by then. So I think, yeah, I think it goes back to, again, setting more realistic goals that you're excited about, or it's giving yourself more grace in the process of how do you create maybe a plan or systems that give you more wiggle room at the upfront so that if you do fall off track, how can you quickly get back on track and not just throw it away? I think that's what most people do, is like as soon as something goes off track, they're just like, "Oh, well, it's over now. I can't possibly get back on track." We're just like quit pretty quickly. And yeah, and that was something that's really been helpful for me when it comes to habits, is from Atomic Habits.
Hmm.
That book, he says to never skip more than 2 days when it comes to a habit, because one day it's like, one day is okay, but once it's 2 or more, then you're just gonna fall completely off track, and that's been really helpful for me is, okay, you can give yourself some grace. It's okay. One day I missed it. I'm not gonna completely throw it away. Even 2 is like, "All right, I really gotta get back on track." But once it's past that, it's really hard to come back to it. So even again, I love the workout examples. Like that's something I do for myself is my goal is working out 4 days a week. So it's usually Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. But I have wiggle room if I have an event early on a Thursday morning and there's no way I'm gonna get up before 6 to work out. I know that about myself is like it's not gonna happen. So I then switch it to Wednesday that week. Like I have that kind of wiggle room in my schedule to do it that way. And that's been such a game changer for me of knowing, oh, it doesn't always have to be Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. It's just 4 days. Maybe
Yeah.
sometimes it's Saturday, sometimes it's Wednesday. That's okay. Just like I need to meet myself where I'm at each week. And I think that's something that we don't do is that we think, okay, we're gonna go into robot mode and every single day is gonna be the exact same. And it's just we're setting ourselves up for failure when we do that. We're just setting the bar so high. And then it's like, as soon as you're sick, as soon as your kid's sick, as soon as you have an early morning meeting, you're going to throw yourself off and not know how to get back on track. So it's like,
Yeah.
let's give ourselves grace, give yourself wiggle room. And it's okay to miss a day or two, but don't miss more than that.
Yeah. I was thinking about atomic habits when you were talking, and I think it's like choosing yourself, right? Like
Um,
you are important, you matter, and there are other things that are going to come up and they may have to matter today, but doesn't mean you
mhm.
can't then matter again the next day. What advice do you have for emerging women leaders who are navigating this world and this environment that's a little bit more challenging now? A lot of things have changed in the workplace and how they can really leverage goals to help them.
Yeah, I think one of the most common things that I have to say to my clients is when it comes to goals or commitments or anything like that is this realistic? And
Mm,
that's something I think 9 times out of 10 we need to hear as ambitious women is that we love to say yes to everything, and our knee-jerk reaction is also like, "Yeah, I'll get it to you tomorrow." And I wanna challenge more women to just pause and stop before you make a new commitment and actually ask yourself, "Is this realistic?" Whether it's even saying yes to it or if you are saying yes, is your timeline realistic? Because I think a lot of us are just setting ourselves up for failure by saying yes and having some sort of knee-jerk reaction of, "I'll get it to you tomorrow, I'll get it to you by end of week." But actually stop and look at your calendar, look at your work commitments, your meetings, but also look at your personal life. What do you have coming up in the next week? And is it realistic for you to get all these things done that you wanna get done? Because I think a lot of times we think, "Oh, in an ideal world, it'll only take me, 8 hours to work on this project. I could do that this week. Yeah, I'll get it to you by end of week." And then you look at your calendar after you get off that meeting and you realize, "Oh my gosh, I only have, like, 2 hours open this week to work on something." So then you're stuck working on it on the weekends or at night,
mhm.
because you already made the commitment. So, yeah, I think a lot of times we just gotta we just need to slow down, look at our calendars, and challenge ourselves with, again, that wiggle room. We all need wiggle room because this is not an ideal world that we're living in, and life is going to continue lifing, I also say. Like, again, it's 'tis the season. I was sick twice this year already, which is awful and miserable, but I couldn't plan for that, right? So it's like, we're gonna keep getting sick, our kids are gonna keep getting sick, things are gonna keep happening that are outside our control, and we need to be able to be realistic, knowing that's gonna happen and have that wiggle room in advance or be willing to kinda negotiate on our timelines and commitments along the way so that we're not stressing ourselves out and we're not burning ourselves out. Because I think a lot of it is actually in our control, and we're doing this to ourselves. Hate
Yeah.
hate to burst your bubble, everyone.
Might be a little people pleasing going on in there,
Oh, yeah.
because you want to say yes. The other thing I was thinking about is sometimes I think we're overly optimistic about how long something's going to take to do.
Oh,
And
yes.
we give it the shortest amount of time instead of giving ourselves some space on the end of it, right, to do
Mhm.
that. Or we also don't think about the interruptions that are gonna happen that,
Mhm.
being sick is an example, but there's, kids come up and say they need something or, a coworker needs something else, and you just can't always plan for those things. You have to build those in. So be kind to
Yeah.
yourself, everyone. Give yourself some wiggle room.
Yeah, I like to recommend a 10 to 20% extra wiggle room on any timeline. So
Mm,
again, if your knee-jerk reaction is, "Oh, I could get it done in 10 hours," add an extra hour or 2 to that because again, like you said, things are gonna keep coming up, you're gonna get interrupted,
yeah.
or if it's something you've never done before, don't assume you know how long it'll take. Say, "Hey, give me an hour to get into it, and then I'll
Yeah.
let you know how much time I need." I think sometimes we need to push back on that in general, just committing to something before we've even gotten into it, and you're like, "Oh, wow, this is way more complicated than I thought," or "There's so many other people involved, and there's a lot of back and forth, and it's gonna take an extra week just communicating with people." So, yeah,
Yeah.
give yourself that wiggle room and don't just think you always know how long it's gonna take because I think that also sets us up for failure.
100%, yes. And plus, I think other people make whatever they want you to do for them sound so urgent. And maybe
Mhm.
it's not really that urgent, but they've made it sound urgent. So you have this knee jerk reaction to say, okay, I can get it done for you today, instead of saying, how important is this? Can it be next week? Because
Mm.
maybe we are also putting pressure on ourselves that's unneeded. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, the people pleasing and, "Oh, that sounded important," and, "Oh, it's my
Mm-hmm.
boss asking, I can't possibly say no." It's like, it's
Mm-hmm.
okay, and I'm sure your boss actually wants you to push back because they don't know also how long something might take or what else is on your plate
Yeah.
all at the same time. Like, you have to be the one to raise your hand and say, hold on, I have these 3 other things I'm already working on. Where does this lie in the priorities?"
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
do those
Great.
deadlines actually get shifted now?
Yeah. It's a good thing to do, and I just don't know that a lot of people know or feel comfortable doing that. So, Brittany and I are giving you permission slips, everyone, to at
Yes.
least ask more questions.
Yes, ask questions is an easy
Ask
way to,
questions.
like, push back without being too direct.
Yeah.
Say, "Hey, I'm already working on a few other things, like, what
Mhm.
is the priority?" And put it back on them without you saying, "I can't possibly do that." Uh,
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to transition into the 4 questions that I ask every guest. So I'm excited to see what your answers are going to be. The first question is, what do you think visibility is, and why did you answer that way?
hmm. Yeah, I think visibility is being seen, heard, and understood as and ideally as your authentic self, and I think that's kind of the 2 sides that we don't always maybe associate with it is the actually, like, being understood. Sometimes
Mm,
people, I think, see visibility as just being seen or heard, but you want it to be landing how you're intending it to be landing. And then I think the second piece of it being your authentic self is what we talked about at the beginning of all the shoulds that we have in our life and work of like there's so many different times we're doing that to ourselves where we say what we think the other person wants us to say or what we think they want to hear, and we're making all these assumptions and putting on a face when really I think we'd all be better off if we're actually taking off these faces and masks and just showed up
mhm.
as our authentic self and connected with one another on a deeper level.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more. What are you doing to be visible?
Yeah, I'd say I'm consistently, putting myself out there and sharing wins and successes as a way to share my credibility too, like on LinkedIn or on my website or when I'm meeting with people. It's something I've had to learn, and it's been difficult to feel comfortable doing that, but I'm finally at that point where I'm like, "All right, this is part of the process, and it's how you grow and how you attract new clients, and it's okay to talk about yourself." That's something
Mhm.
I think a lot of women struggle with too.
Yeah, I think that's very true. What is the best leadership or career advice you've received?
I think one of the big ones that has stuck with me, and actually I share with a lot of clients too, is when you're in the corporate environment is you need to be essentially framing everything you do from the perspective of what value it adds to the company or team. And it's a great way to pitch yourself, your value, but also having influence on other people and on the team and your manager or leadership, and especially people in leadership. That's their bottom line. They wanna know what the impact is to the company or what value it's adding. So if you're already speaking like that when it comes to your projects and your work, it's gonna make your life a lot easier of, again, moving up the corporate ladder or, kind of getting additional resources or whatever it is you might be looking for. It's a easy way to get that support when you're communicating that way.
Yes, I totally agree with that 100%. And the last question is, what is a book you would recommend to the audience?
I'm actually reading Serial Fixer by Leah Marone right now, and she
Mm,
is actually someone I know here in Charlotte, and she just wrote this book, and I'm actually gonna be interviewing her on my own podcast here soon to talk about
fun.
it, but it's a really great perspective, especially for high achieving women, and we mentioned people pleasing a lot today. That is something essentially this idea that women tend to be I don't think she even focuses on women, but I see it because I work mostly with women, is that we tend to be these serial fixers where we're trying to help everyone around us and we're trying to control all of our environments and situations and people. And she really talks about how hurtful that is for us and the people around us, actually. Like we think we're being helpful, and really it's just coming from this, for the most part, a people pleasing place. And it's causing a lot more work for us and a lot more anxiety than it's ever worth.
Wow. Okay. Well, I might have to talk to her because you could have put my face on that book for sure. Because that was definitely what I was doing for a really long time and had no
Mm.
idea. Really thought I
Yeah,
was doing the right thing. So
yeah.
love that. Yes, I might need an introduction to her. It sounds like.
Yes, yes, happy to introduce you. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned she's a therapist, but then she also does, like, workshops in corporate America, so she's
Mm,
kinda works both with individuals and then also comes to companies and talks to groups, and yeah, it's really great read, and yeah, she's just has some really great concepts and frameworks to help people through that.
that's nice. Well, love that. So that's a book we have not heard about. So I love that we can add a new one to the list. How can people connect with you, Brittany?
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active, I'd say. Feel free to send me a message there. I also do have an Instagram account, but full transparency, I'm not as active there intentionally for my mental well being and emotional well being. That's a boundary I recently set with my own therapist, and it's been really helpful. I highly recommend it.
Mhm.
And yeah, feel free to check out my website, hellovelocity.co, and you can contact me there, and my email is there as well.
Excellent. Well, I will put all the links in the show notes so everybody can find out more about you if they want to check in with you and definitely connect with her on LinkedIn. So, thanks for being on the show today, Brittany. I think you brought a lot of new perspective. I really love your framework. I think that is so helpful for people to have something simple to look at, but has a lot of power underneath it that they can leverage and understand kind of where they stand. And of course, work with you and have a goal setting session, which would be ideal for you and for them to come together and work on that.
Yes, thanks so much for having me, and I'm
Well,
excited to also have you on my podcast soon.
yes, yeah, everybody. I'll be going on her podcast soon, so we'll make that available to everybody too when that happens. So, all right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for joining today on the Visibility Factor podcast, and we'll catch you on the next one.